Welcome to another episode of Sisters in Conversation. I'm your host, Tewelo Motwani. I'm an attorney by profession and the founder of a platform called Sister in Law, which is a platform dedicated to empowering women through legal education. On today's episode, I'm joined yet again by Bohlale Paile. If you guys recall, and if you've been consistently following this podcast, then you know that we had Bohlale as our first guest of season 2. And even though she doesn't have a legal background, at the time, she was a talent acquisition specialist at Bowmans, right? So even without a legal background, she was working in a law firm. And I had just invited her to give us insider trading into what is it exactly that, recruiters are looking for when they're trying to recruit new talent for a law firm. A lot has happened since then. And we are officially on one of the first few episodes of Where Are They Now? Hello, Bohlale. Welcome to the show yet again.
Thank
in
you,
person.
In person this
Because it was
time.
COVID.
It was COVID the first time and we were online, so it's exciting to be in person. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. No, thank you for consistently just giving your time to this platform and always, empowering young legal professionals. I'm speaking about legal professionals, because and young students. So welcome back.
Thank you. Excited for the conversation.
Fantastic. What's new? Okay, so the last time we spoke, the few things I remember is that you had a background in banking. I think you started at Investec and Standard Bank as well. Then you moved on to Bowmans.
Right.
And then one of the last few conversations before you started doing your own thing was We Buy Cars.
That's right.
So maybe let's pick up from post-Bowmans.
Yes. Okay. So as you rightly said, I worked at Bowmans for about 6 years. And soon after leaving Bowmans, then went on to join an organization called Transaction Capital, of which their biggest subsidiary is We Buy Cars. But I joined them in a very different capacity, right? Because most of my career from Investec, Standard Bank and Bowmans has been heading up the graduate recruitment and development portfolio, where we just solely focus on young talent, graduates coming out of different universities under different disciplines and all of that. So when I moved to Transaction Capital and We Buy Cars, I went there as the head of HR and talent, right? A big pull for me in moving was the opportunity to start up a graduate program, which for me was fantastic because all the organizations I had been to already had a grad program already embedded in. So this was an opportunity to just start something from scratch that's my own, but it was in the chartered accountant space. And so I did that in the time that I was at Transaction Capital. It's still running even today. And then We Buy Cars left We Buy Cars last year.
We Buy Cars as well, they didn't have a graduate program and that was your project.
No, so Transaction Capital is where I started the grad program. We Buy Cars did not have a grad program, but that wasn't a priority focus for them at the time. So it was something that was going to be in the pipeline for them, but not something that I was focusing on when I went there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So having had all of that experience and just obviously to, the younger listeners, I'm also just trying to educate, the young followers of this platform that it's not black and white in law. You don't have to be an advocate. You don't have to be an attorney. And obviously so many more platforms or opportunities or careers exist out there in different setups to, just doing pupillage or being in a law firm. What are some of the exciting opportunities that you believe, someone with a law degree would be suited to?
It's so funny, even though I've left Bowmans, I think a lot of the people that still contact me are LLB students still wanting advice about this and that and how do I get in and if I don't get in then what,
and
right?
I think it's also because just post your initial interview on the podcast, you then came back 3 or 4 times on the platform and just talking about CV drafting and personal branding and all of that. So maybe some of the students are still seeing you from
from that
platform.
perspective.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And so that was one of the initial reasons why I've left to do my own thing, is to continue helping in the young talent space, particularly young professionals, just helping them understand what it takes to make it in, right? From CV, interview skills, personal branding is something that is a new kind of, not a new venture, it's something I've always done and always do naturally, I think, for myself. But I realize that it is something that people need to understand a bit more.
So you've packaged it
so I've packaged it a bit better, right? And so to answer your question just around like legal students, you know, it's so fascinating how I've recently started a podcast, right? And it's called Suits and Stories. And the idea around that in the first season is that I am interviewing different legal lawyers, right? Some of them are associates, some senior associates, some of them have gone to the Constitutional Court. And the beauty around understanding their career journey has been fascinating, right? Because not everyone goes straight into law, straight into big law. Some of them first go into a compliance program, first into like a legal program in an in-house organization, right? In an in-house capacity. And so the legal profession, from interviewing them, is actually just so broad. You don't have to silo yourself into becoming, I want to become that attorney, I want to become a partner or a director at a particular firm. You can use it in so many different ways. And I just believe that with the thousands of graduates coming out of the different universities, there's only a handful that get into articles, right? Because there's not that many law firms that are providing that kind of platform. Like if you were to think about chartered accountants, right? You've got both Deloitte, Libo, Ernst & Young, and those guys take Boma 200, 150 graduates at any given point in time. But the top law firms that you have are taking a max of 40 any given year.
I haven't even heard 40. The most I heard I guess that was at the time that I was doing articles was like 24, 28.
You see?
I mean, and 40 isn't even a high number.
It's not even a high number, and that's what I'm trying to say. And we're taking from all the regions, from Cape Town, from Durban, from PE, from Joburg. And you know how many universities are just in Joburg on its own,
the reality is
right?
that we can't all start at top 5.
You can't,
Sure.
you know? So it is about being smart around, if I don't get into top 5 and I get into a smaller firm, what is it that I'm looking for at the smaller firm that will still give me the opportunity to be eligible for top law firms later on, maybe as an associate, as a senior associate. So those are the things and the nuances that you need to be alive to, because when you get into a smaller firm, make sure that the smaller firm that you get into, the medium-sized firm you get into, has the kind of practice areas that you will find in a big law firm, right? Because the idea is that the exposure that you get in the 2 years that you are in that small or medium-sized law firm should give you the type of experience that is going to be required of you when you are wanting to then apply to a top firm as an associate, as a senior associate. So those are some of the nuances that I think are important to be talking about as you look at the small and medium-sized law firms. And for those of you that don't get into a law firm, then looking at legal grad programs at banks, at consulting firms, there's a lot of different opportunities outside of legal that will give you some level of skill set within the degree that you've done.
And I think as well, for me, it was very interesting. The other day on LinkedIn, somebody from, I think it was head of legal at L'Oreal reached out to me. And I was like, there's legal, there's legal everywhere.
Exactly.
And it dawned on me that, of course, we need legal in makeup.
Everywhere.
Of course, we need legal everywhere.
All organizations.
We can't all be at law firms, right? Sure, that is very nice. So earlier you mentioned something about personal branding.
Yeah.
And if I'm in my first year or my fourth year, why should I care about like personal branding? What is this personal branding thing? And what's little me in my little corner going to do with this information?
Right. And that's most of the questions we get. Like, it's like, okay, where do I fit into this thing?
Yeah, because when we think of personal branding, we start thinking of like big people who are like brands. We're like, okay, Queen Bee, Oprah, you know? So why should I, as a first year student, care about a conversation that has to do with personal branding?
Well, I think really in the type of job market we are in, particularly in law, where it's as highly competitive as it is, right? We've described how many graduates come out of university, how many of them actually even get the jobs in the top law firms. Having a personal brand is what differentiates you, right? So put on a recruiter hat for a moment. I was probably sifting through 3,000 applications for one particular year. 3,000 applications are coming in for me to then pick the top 40 candidates that are going to be eligible as candidate attorneys in that particular year. Now, personal branding says, what sets me apart? Who am I? What are the skills and strengths that I have that add value to any organization, right? If you are not constantly thinking about these things, your CV and application will be like 2,500 other people, right? It's going to be same. Why? Because you've decided that you're just going to go into university and just do your LLB. You've decided that just passing is enough. You've decided that I don't need to do extracurricular activities to gain any other skill sets or strengths.
I don't need to volunteer.
You've decided that you don't have to volunteer. You don't have to do anything.
Work at retail, all of that.
That then sets you apart, right? That's what personal branding is about. It's about who am I? What am I good at? Why am I different? And what value am I going to add to any organization, right? And the only way you're able to do that is by being intentional about your career. Do you know how many people don't have career goals? Yeah? Even when I started at varsity, I was just kind of like, what do I want to study? I know I don't want to do BA. I know I don't want to do BSc. I'm not a sciencey kind of person. Let me settle for BCom. In BCom, what do I feel like? What am I good at? I'm not sure. Let me do general BCom, right? We always kind of just trying to take the broader generalist route. But in order to be that person that is then handpicked to come into the law firm that you want to be in.
Intentional.
Right? You need to be intentional about those things. Now, intentionality doesn't necessarily mean that you have to know exactly what you want to do with your life, right? To the T, because we know that when you're at varsity, you are still discovering yourself. And that's okay. It's part of the process. But in discovering yourself, if you decided you're doing LLB, do a bloody good job at your LLB. If you've decided that you're going to go the full route, make sure you do extracurricular activities that are going to help differentiate you from other people, right? So personal branding as a first-year student that's studying, it's about a mindset. It's about tuning yourself to understanding where you're going, what you want to do, what does it take for me to be the best at that. So that's why it matters. That's why it matters.
Sure. And I think I also wanted to add that it's also, it's not just the technical stuff like you can do like legal research and whatever. It's also the interpersonal stuff, right? That you need to, I believe it is something you can train yourself into getting right.
Definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, sure.
Definitely. And I think that's where extracurricular activities come in. A lot of people think that they need to do the kind of extracurricular activities that are only directed to law, you know?
And when you say that, I just remember one of the CVs that came in sometime last year. You know, students are always reaching out looking for something to do. And I'll always remember her CV because under job...
profile summary.
Yeah, the job summary, yes. She said that house calls, hair braiding. Like, of course, that is a job. It's not, your job is not going to be this place that you know, going to sit behind the till, being a bank teller, whatever. Doing house calls and braiding, that is the job. And for me, it will always stand out because we should be saying those things in CVs as part of showing that we have discipline, showing up at a client's house on time to start her hair at 9. That is a discipline that's important for a potential employer to know.
Exactly. And I love that you mentioned that because that is a lot of the questions that I do get just around, I've got the side hustle. Where do I put it on my CV? Do I need to put it on the CV, right? And I always say, guys, even if you have a section that says part-time experience or work experience, right? That is a place for you to be profiling what you do in your spare time. Do you know how many people will sit at home because they don't have a job and they'll just sit at home? And one thing you don't realize is that, yes, the hair braiding and the house calls does not relate to legal or LLB, but what does it say about you from a characteristic perspective, right? It says that you're proactive. It says that you take initiative. It says that you are able to manage time, right? You're resourceful. Those things are all necessary to be successful in any career that you go to. Sure. So too many times people are thinking about the technical aspect of the work that they do, and they forget how critical it is for you to have the interpersonal characteristics that are so necessary in any corporate environment that you go to. So that teaches you already, when you go into a corporate environment, being there on time, being proactive, taking initiative, going out there, marketing yourself, branding yourself. Those are things that are all important.
Yeah.
So
also, I mean, if you're braiding hair, I assume that you also maybe like have some sort of page on social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, and someone needs to manage that page, right?
Exactly.
So that is an important piece of information to put out there.
Definitely.
Sure.
Definitely.
So one of the things I remember from the last time we spoke was how you absolutely loved what you were doing, but you then just needed to fly out of the comfort of a good paying job and just heed to your calling for, Bohlale and get corporate ready. How was that transition? Was it scary? Is there anything that you like, I could have prepared better if I had done this? Or are you just happy that you just went in with a plan, but not necessarily knowing exactly how you'd execute, this, and the other?
So it was scarier being in a job I didn't enjoy.
Sure.
Than flying out and doing my own thing, right? And I say this because, as much as when we had the conversation, I was at Bowmans, then it was about moving out and finding something a little bit more challenging because I could do what I was doing in my sleep. I was in a comfort zone, right? Went out, found something more challenging.
Starting the graduate program.
Yeah, so being the head of HR was something very different to just focusing on young talent, right? And I loved it. I enjoyed it. I grew a lot in the 2 years that I was doing that kind of role. But once again, it wasn't aligned to what Bohlale loves doing.
Okay, so it was challenging, but it was challenging,
but I just wasn't aligned, right? If my role was to go in and start up a grad program and manage the grad program, and that's all that I did, that is still challenge and alignment together. Now I had veered off and I was doing challenge, and mostly because people, so it's so important sometimes what you listen to, how much you take on of what people think you should be doing. I think a big part of my decision was having heard so many times that, what's next for you? Why don't you go for a head of HR role? Why don't you do this type of role? And so you end up going for the role. And I promise you, I wouldn't have taken the role had it not been for the fact that I must start up a grad program, because I knew that was my alignment piece. But then veering off into it and just being generalist, it's just not me, and showing up on a daily basis to a space that is just not you. Man, that was a scary space for me. Because every single day I walked in, I had to leave myself at the door and just operate according to what they wanted me to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that sounds...
For 8-9 hours of a day, every day.
And we spend too much time at work, eh? Sure.
So to answer you, yes, it was scary, the thought of leaving, but so exciting and so fulfilling at the thought of just focusing on what it is you love doing, because then you show up differently. Then you're excited. The energy you bring into every single day is just very different to leaving yourself at the door every morning. So being more of yourself is the most liberating place to be.
Like your face lit up.
Yeah.
Your face lit up. I love that. So can you tell us a little bit more about Get Corporate Ready then?
So Get Corporate Ready.
The exciting stuff that you're doing through the platform. I'm very proud of you, by the way.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. You know what? I'm inspired by people like you as well, right? I think there's so many people that I've watched in the background, and I've seen people jump off and do their own thing and start their own brands and start their own organizations. And I'm just like, I mean, if they can do it, why not?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So I thank people like you for giving some of us the courage in the thought of it's possible and can be done. So Get Corporate Ready, I actually registered in 2021, and that should tell you something, right? I was still at Bowmans at the time. So I registered.
So at the time of our first conversation.
Yes. So,
but I had discovered you on YouTube already doing very like short snippets. Okay. So you had,
yeah.
All right.
So I had started somewhat of building the brand then. And that was born out of COVID, not being able to interact one-on-one with people. And I just felt I still needed to get the message out on how to prepare and how to do this and how to do that, right? So that's where the YouTube channel then came about. So by the time we met, you had discovered me through that. I'd already registered my organization because part of the thinking was by the time I turn 40, like I don't want to be working for anyone. Like I want to actually start doing my own thing. God had different plans for me. I was thrust into, obviously took the opportunity to be part of Transaction Capital, We Buy Cars, fantastic organization. But that's really what pushed me to say, now's time to jump off and do your own thing. So being so misaligned to who I was in the later part of my career pushed me to say, if not now, when? Because if you think about it, had I been comfortable and enjoying my job, I probably would still be in my job, right? So God sometimes just puts you in positions where you're so uncomfortable that you have to take the leap. And you find out that it's actually the best thing for you. So Get Corporate Ready really started off as a social media platform where I was really just sharing information, advice around how to prepare for the world of work. This was born from a point of having spent over 10 years doing this kind of work, seeing thousands of graduates at various universities come into corporate, seeing what's worked, what doesn't work. And I found that a lot of people from previously disadvantaged backgrounds just don't know the basic information about how to prepare your CV, how to show up when you go for an interview, why you need to prepare when you go for an interview. And because they don't have those role models, right? They don't have people in their lives that are actually role models that can help prepare them for that kind of thing. So the start of Get Corporate Ready was really born out of wanting to really give everyone an equal platform and ensure that people had all the information that they might have otherwise, like my sisters have gotten all this information because they've got an older sister to tell them. So I almost saw myself as the older sister for many other people to say, guys, this is what you need to do. So it started off as a social media thing. Obviously, now that I've left full-time corporate, what I currently do is do a lot of young talent strategy for certain organizations. So by young talent strategy, I mean all the way from attraction, selection, inductions, work readiness programs, retention plans, employment equity strategy for your young people coming in, because a lot of them, it's a pipeline, right? So for organizations that don't have the resources to have a full-time graduate manager looking after something like this, I then am the person that comes in and says, let me do it for you from a consultant perspective, help you package it, help you plan it, all of that kind of thing. So I do that for certain organizations. I obviously run different workshops depending on what it is they need me to come and teach. So whether it's a personal branding talk, whether it's a self-leadership talk, whether it has to do with CV, interview, skill workshops, those are the kinds of things that I go in and do for different organizations. But obviously on the side, I do career mentorship as well. So you do get people one-on-one. Bohlale, I'm feeling stuck in my career. I'm wanting to pivot or I'm wanting to step up into that leadership position. How do I go about doing that, right? So that and interview preparedness. So someone has an interview next week and they're like, Bohlale, I need to prepare for this interview. Can I have a one-on-one mock interview with you, right? And so I do all of those kinds of things, but also many other things that just crop up in between.
Because now you can.
Because now I can.
Because now you can.
And I love
that. Because now you can.
Because now I can. So there'll be times where, I've spoken to executive groups of people about my leadership journey and the courage it takes to lead and the courage it takes to do your own thing and be fulfilled, like live a life that is fulfilled, right? And I love that because it doesn't limit me into what I thought I should be doing. It allows me to explore other aspects of myself that still allow me to say, oh, I did not be good at that kind of thing, or I didn't know people saw that in me to ask me to come speak about it, you know? So Get Corporate Ready, in essence, has to do with young talent strategy, career mentorship. But Bohlale as a brand on her own does more than just the young talent strategy. And it's been 8 months now. It's been a busy 8 months.
It's been busy. I've been seeing you, girl. I've been seeing you.
And I thank God for that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't take for granted that the things that I do now, it's Bohlale is doing. No. There's things that come up and I'm asking the person, but where do you know me? Like, where do you know me from? I don't, like, where have I met you? And they're like, no, we've seen your YouTube video, we've seen this, and we think
so
you'd be great at doing that, you know? But that's where, to your first question, personal branding comes in. Once you're consistently putting yourself out there as who you are, what value you add, the skill set you have, the unique strengths that you have, and you show up consistently for yourself, before you know it, people are searching for you.
That just gave me goosebumps because I know what you're talking about. And, you know, when I first started, like when I took the leap of faith and left my job, personal branding wasn't the conversation I was having. But I think more than anything at the time, I just knew that if I do this consistently, something has got to give. Because I just knew that I'm going to be broke for that first year or two. In fact, I had even said I'm possibly going to be broke for 5 years. But if I can make sure that every single week I teach a woman something she didn't know about the law, and I do that consistently, something has got to give.
There we go. And look at how your platform has grown.
Sure.
Look at the events that you do.
Sure.
Right? You are bound to grow exponentially when you focus on personal branding. Many people that sometimes fail at trying to do their own things because no one knows who they are. They're not willing to show up. They're not willing to put in the time. They're not being intentional about putting themselves out there on social media because they feel shy. They feel like, oh, but you do that well, Bohlale, it's not me. And I'm like, but who said that it's a natural Bohlale side? I have to go out of my shell to do what I do. People assume because you talk that you are always rearing to go and rearing to talk. And I'm like, no,
It's not like that. It's not
you
like
know?
that, yeah.
But it's part of the process.
Yeah. And I like that you say that because whenever I meet people in real life, there's the expectation that I'm going to like start talking first.
And you're like,
when I'm alone, I'm just like, okay, I'm here to observe, you know.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
When you were mentioning, now I forgot the wording, but you just basically providing like a one-stop shop from how do companies attract new talent and, you know, right up to promotion. One of the conversations I want to bring into it is there anything you're doing in your strategy to align with like transformation, representation? Are you advising organizations on issues like that?
So certainly employment equity transformation comes into the conversation all the time. A lot of organizations do have a mandate to ensure that they are bringing in talent from previously disadvantaged backgrounds, that they are making sure that from a diversity perspective, they're bringing in people from different backgrounds, different races, you know, and employment equity and the strategy behind that somehow links into triple BEE when you're talking about skills development and all of that kind of thing. But a lot of organizations, like I said, that have programs for young talent, it's because it's a leadership development program, right? So these are people they're trying to groom into being senior executives in the next 5-10 years of being in the organization. So diversity always comes into play when you speak about that, because sometimes it's actually harder getting, you know, the type of talent you're wanting at that senior level, right? And it makes it so much easier to groom people from the ground up, because those people then grow up in your culture. They grow up knowing the feel of the place. They grow up knowing the culture of the space. They grow up knowing the people. And as much as, you know, making sure that transformation is an imperative for all the organizations, I think also it's not just about checking off a list, right? It's not just about numbers. It's not just about, we managed to get 20, equity candidates in through the door. It's also about, you know, if you're going to invest your time and your money in training up guys into your graduate program, how are you ensuring that you're creating a culture and environment where they want to stay with you? Because then you're going to invest all that money until they are leaders in the organization. So it's a broader discussion. And I think some companies are getting it right. Others are still very much at the beginning phases of understanding that bringing them in is not fixing your long-term plan, right? So it's about bringing them in, but how are you ensuring that it's a culture and an environment that makes them want to stay in the long run? Yeah.
Sure. Because, I mean, if you have the numbers at the bottom and you don't have the numbers at the top, then it really doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
Sure.
And that's what I think a lot of organizations are faced with. They'll show you, oh, no, he's 68% transformed in the organization. And you're like, where? Where's the majority of that 68? Oh, at the bottom.
At the bottom.
Okay, and what does your top look like? That's where you need to be transparent. Get top deck. Yes, Raz. Like, it literally is that.
Top deck.
You know? And so they gloat on numbers, but the most important thing to then ask them is, where are those numbers? If it is nicely kind of spread across top management, middle management, junior management into bottom, then you've got a perfect remedy, right? Because also the link between attracting people in and making sure they want to stay is ensuring that they have someone up there that they see looks like them, right? So if there's no representation at your top level or your middle level, you are almost guaranteed that those kids already have in their mind that I'm not here for the long term.
I'm not supposed to be here.
It's not a space for me. I don't see me at the top, right? So the strategy, employment equity and transformation strategy really is not just, you don't fix it by having a grad program and having all the equity candidates come through the grad program. You have to fix it systematically throughout the organization.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Bohlale.
Pleasure.
In the little time that we have left, can you, what is one of your favorite memories of these past 8 months? The highlight of doing Bohlale on her own. What's the one thing that stands out to you? And what's the one thing that was a bit of a challenge and it made you say, should I have done this? We need to know the good. We need to know the bad.
So a highlight for me was, and this might sound a little bit strange, but I want you to just go with me on this journey. The day that I left We Buy Cars, that very day, I went down the lift, stepped into the car. As I started the car, the song that was playing at that point in time was the song Fetch Your Life, right? And it wasn't just playing the entire song, it was at the bridge. And the bridge says, all is well, right? All is well, well, well. As I switched on the car, that's all that was playing.
That sounds like in the movies.
I promise you, it gave me goosebumps and chills completely.
I can imagine.
Because it wasn't a thing of coincidence. It was almost like a reaffirmation.
It was when we say, God, give me a sign. It was
a God sign to say, you're sorted.
Yeah.
All is well. I've got you. Right? And that I carry with me through all the highs, through all the lows.
All is well.
All is well. I'm on the right journey. I'm meant to be on this journey. And to be busy the very next morning, to have been booked for something the very next week. It wasn't my doing. Like I wasn't even advertising before I left We Buy Cars that I was going on my own. But somehow things just aligned in a way that people thought, oh, Bohlale, we've got something happening in 2 weeks' time. We thought of you. I'm like, why out of the blue?
And it's
like, why don't you assume that I'm working full time and now you want me randomly on like
Wednesday at
June
12.
16 at 12, right? So my first month was the busiest month. Not to say I wasn't busy after that, but you expect to have a month of, and I'd given myself time to say, okay, Bohlale, the next 2 months, we're just going to like relax, de-stress from corporate. I was busy. Every week I was doing something.
There's no time to rest.
But it's all that. God. Like when I say to you, I did not lift a finger to arrange the busyness of that first month. That tells you something. So that for me, seeing how God has shown up for me time and time again, and going back to grounding myself in the song that I heard when I left. And that is my constant reminder, you're on the right path. That has been the highlight and continues to be the highlight for me, right?
Yeah.
What challenges?
But I suppose
You know,
also
in the beginning,
no 2 days are the same in
no
this kind
2
of...
days are the same.
Yeah,
You just
so,
don't know. Like I
yeah.
could start a week and think, oh, this week is free. Like I actually have nothing for this week.
Yep.
By Tuesday morning, I've got 3 things booked in this week.
Yeah,
you
back
know,
to back.
it's one of those where you're almost living on the edge all the time
Yeah.
because you never know what's coming up. And then God just shows up in ways that you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I'll come through. I'll do this. I'll do that, you know? So I think the challenge for me has been feeling like I need to have a structured plan for what I'm doing in the chaos of things cropping up whenever they do. So there's a certain plan I had when I came out to say, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to execute it. Da, 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 da. In my first 2 months, I was so busy with so many other things that I then felt like I was behind on my own personal plan of what I wanted to do. But then I had to ask myself, but all these other plans, because it's coming from a place where I haven't initiated, maybe that's what I should be doing, right? And not necessarily my plan of what I wanted to execute. So always being in that constant flux of, should I focus on what I wanted to execute, or must I just let God continue leading me in where He wants me to be? And just feeling like, am I making headway? You know? That's been the most challenging part.
And I think that's so important that you've mentioned that, because whenever I'm busy at the beginning of the year with this vision board of mine, the constant reminder is, but also just allow yourself to be fluid, you know? Yes, you must have a plan, because you shouldn't just
jump and not have a plan.
But because having a plan actually allows me to be very specific in the things I say yes to. I found that, which year was it? 2021 or 2020, 2022 actually. 2022, I was trying to make up for the year that I was like pregnant, because it was COVID, 2020, hard lockdown. Then 2021, I was pregnant. So just as we got out of that hard lockdown, I was pregnant, and then that led me to slow down. Then 2022, I said yes to everything. I was miserable. I was miserable. So having a plan actually, you know, allows you to filter and just say yes to the things that matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? One thing that I've picked up, Debello, is when you have a certain plan for yourself and being grounded in who you are and how you show up, there's been many opportunities that have come up that didn't feel right. Whether it's in the way in which we'll pay you so much, but then you must charge for this much. Like there's so many opportunities that come up, not many, but there's been a few that come up that seem lucrative, but don't feel aligned to who I am. And there's always that thing of, but the money is good. And I have to always remind myself, all is well.
Sure.
Like I'm good.
I love that.
Like
I
don't.
love that.
Yeah.
And thank you for just painting the picture. Like I literally went down the elevator with you. I got into the car, switched on the radio. I heard, like, I managed to just visualize it. And thank you for that. Like you're a good storyteller. Please.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bohlale, for joining us on this platform yet again. Is there any last words that you'd like to say? Maybe something that I didn't ask you that you'd like to speak about now that you have the platform, or just maybe a word of encouragement for someone younger who's listening to today's episode?
One takeaway that I'd maybe like to share with the audience, trust in your intuition around a lot of things that you do. There's so often times where you'll feel the pressure to do things that maybe don't align with who you are.
Yeah.
And when you do it, you're starting a path that you don't know 5 years down the line what that actually means for you. 2 years down the line what that means for you, right? So trusting your intuition on what feels right, as opposed to going out to do things that are I need the money, I need the job, you catapulting yourself in a space that you're actually wasting time.
Yeah.
Right? So as you go throughout your career, let it feel right. Do things that feel right to you.
Because working from a point of desperation,
It doesn't work.
Sure.
You know, you end up spiraling, you end up getting yourself in a space where mentally you're
not
sharp
okay.
or you're not okay. And it's not worth it in the end, right? So I think biggest takeaway for me throughout my career and what I'm doing now is following your passion, following your heart, following your intuition in guiding you. If something doesn't feel right, trust it. Sometimes we just put intuition like, no, it's fine, I'll deal with it. Never works.
Yeah.
Never
Sure.
works. So that's just my 2 cents.
There you have it, everybody. Bohlale, thank you so much. Thank you. There's nothing more that I require from you, ma'am.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give you an update on where I am. And thanks for your questions. I think it helped me really give you a rounded full picture
I'm happy.
of where we are.
That's
why I'm only happy. So thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, comment, and share this episode with everybody you love.